You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So Portland lately has had some just crazy stuff going on. There's like so many shootings that I'm, picking a story and then trying to find what I always do is I always look at additional stories to corroborate kind of what I'm reading in general, because you can't trust whatever news you read, right? Maybe that's part of the reason you're coming here. News for reasonable people. You're reasonable. I'm reasonable. We're going to analyze this from a reasonable standpoint. This storyline today, armed Portland Antifa pick fight with violent biker gang, then blame police when things get violent. This sounds like an outrageous headline, doesn't it? It does. It sounds completely unreasonable. The crazy thing is that actually accurately describes this story in Portland. Now, getting back to Portland had a wild weekend last weekend and so many shootings going on that I was having trouble keeping track of all the narratives. Like, okay, this one, is this story this one? Is this story? I'm just getting confused. I'm like, okay, but there was this shooting here and this shooting here and, just stuff going back and forth. And some of the news stories, they approach things from such different angles that you're like, is this even the same story that I'm reading about? I'm reading about a guy who's a furry, guys who dressed up in costumes and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know what we're going with. But this story here, super interesting. Thank you to the viewer. I've got some great viewers. I've got some great listeners. You guys send me stuff all the time. That's just amazing. And this story, I wouldn't have found this one on my own. Let's just read it. I mean, this is worth it. Gunfire erupted when violent Antifa militants appear to have picked a fight with the notorious Portland area biker gang. Antifa lost. At least one person ended up dead and 5 others were injured in Portland Saturday night. Portland police are still sorting things out, but what we know is that police were called on Saturday night shortly after 8 p.m. to a disturbance that quickly escalated into gunfire. So now I'm looking at a tweet and it's kind of a breaking scene and you've got all these police officers. There's video that, I've watched the video and there's all these cop cars just lining the street. And it's just this mayhem at this point in time. And this portion of the video, this is, after 8 o'clock, one possible fatality. Yeah, that did happen. And at least 2 victims being transported to the hospital, waiting for more information. They're still in the hospital. I don't think anybody else has passed away. So, and this is the one I recorded this yesterday. This is with an armed homeowner and an armed protester. This is fleshing out that story a little bit. I didn't have enough sources yesterday when I was reading this. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on, but I knew it was an important enough story because we cover a lot of this stuff here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. As Portland Police Public Information Officer Lieutenant Nathan Shepard attempted to update the media on the shooting melee in Northeast Portland, 2 known Antifa militants took over the news conference, commandeered the microphones, and began blaming the police for failing to do their jobs to protect them. Now, at the quote-unquote peaceful protests that I've been at where Antifa has been involved, oftentimes they indicate all cops are bastards and that, police should, eliminate themselves and just take themselves out. And they're not very pro-police. Let's just say that. They're, basically think of the police as fascism. So, we want to eliminate them, of course. All the crazy stuff that happened here at CHOP, oftentimes that involved Antifa. And it was like, what are you guys doing? I mean, what do we got going on here? It's just nutty. So I've watched video on this media deal with the lieutenant, and he's just talking, giving a, nuts and bolts of what happened, kind of running down the story. And then these 2 people from Antifa just kind of come along and just basically hijack the news conference. According to Antifa protesters who took over the presser, identified by the Post-Millennial as Haley Nolan and Dustin Ferreira, the previous night, their comrades had gone to confront members of notorious Portland area biker gang, and police say at least one of the Antifa militants was armed, which they usually are. All right, so Nolan, who appeared to have trouble breathing, she's the gal from Antifa that was talking. She was not in black. That was interesting. She was in a very bright pink or, I don't know, orange or some kind of colored coat. That's not Antifa colors. Nolan, who appeared to have trouble breathing. Yeah, as she talked, she was kind of, it was like she'd just run a marathon or something. Said it was the Portland Police Bureau's fault when a woman died in the shooting melee and 5 others were wounded because the police are supposed to protect Antifa, who you don't want police at all. You know, logic here is tricky at best. They are sending the biker gang jokers to kidnap us, she breathlessly announced. She pointed to Lieutenant Shepard and accused the police of encouraging the violence against Antifa, saying they are sanctioning this violence against us. We are dying. We are trying to peacefully protest with guns, and they are killing us. And I want to know if any of you care. I don't think the police do. I mean, that's kind of my thought. I think a lot of other citizens don't either. It's not that we want to see other human beings die, but you know, you get into a firefight with a biker gang, you know, you get what you pay for. So I don't really know any other ways to see that. Loss of life is horrible, granted, but there's some times where you enter into a deal and you got to take the consequences, and you know, biker gangs tend to shoot back, right? I mean, that's just the deal, right? So I want to know if Ted Wheeler cares. See the video below. We're going to watch just a little bit of the video. We're going to hear just a little bit of the video. It's, it's alarming. She indicated why they took over the news conference by admitting, we're not going to let them capture the narrative and lie, as she pointed to the police. Are the police lying about anything? Am I lying about anything here? These are perspectives on something that happened that a lot of people witnessed. And I don't think anybody is saying, hey, the police are sicking the biker gang on Antifa. It seems like Antifa and the biker gang, they're getting into it on their own. So, you know, there's that. We're not going to let the police capture the narrative and lie, as she pointed to the police. We can understand why. This is the author speaking now. When you're Antifa and you pick a fight with a biker gang, Antifa looks pretty dumb. Okay. And I've had so many people, I've covered, you know, a lot of the social protests, and oftentimes Antifa gets involved. And I've had a lot of people state, hey, you know, it would just take a couple of members from a biker gang to, you know, put these people in their place. And, yeah, I mean, that's probably true. When the media watched, the Antifa goons chased the lieutenant back to his patrol car and attempted to surround it, their favorite trick. If you're trying to get favor with the police, don't chase a lieutenant back to his car. I mean, that's just bad business. It just makes you look silly. The whole thing is just, it's not reasonable. It's not reasonable. Nothing about this is reasonable. So, again, I go back to, all right, what's the beef here? The beef here is that one of the Antifa members lost their life. Okay. All right. But, you know, you're involved with a biker gang? It's like, okay, where did you expect that to go? What did you expect the biker gang to do? Yeah. Well, so this press conference just got cut short, and then there's this throng of people that the lieutenant walks off. He's like, yeah, I'm not dealing with this, which I don't really blame. I mean, these people, yeah, they're not reasonable. So Antifa and their Black Lives Matter wingmen have done nothing but denigrate the Portland police for the past 2 or 3 years, demanding they be defunded because they are killing us, according to the white women at the presser. All right. The logic here is, we need your help, but we want you defunded. We don't want you. We need you. We don't want you. Which one is it? Which one is it? What is it that you're trying to accomplish here? It's unclear. Let's just step back for a second to observe the irony that Portland Antifa, Rose City Antifa, has been at the forefront of calling for defunding police. Portland's police department has been decimated by the defunding after city commissioners and the mayor took these Antifa dunces' word that there should be fewer cops. That happened. That's the deal. That's literally what happened. You had a bunch of groups get together and say, defund the police, greatest thing ever. And then, violent crime just started to escalate and people like, oh, yeah, well, yeah. And the entire Democratic Party has disassociated themselves with the defund the police movement. entirely. You got like one political person left. You got like one. I'm not even going to name her name. You got one person left. She's like, defund the police. Yeah, everybody's telling me not to say that anymore, but I'm just going to go down swinging. All right, let's see how that goes. We'll see how this all goes in the 2022 midterm elections. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, right? Hey, you said defund the police, and we've had a pretty good sized spike in crime. Interesting. So we've got the defunding after city commissioners and the mayor and basically the city council said we should have fewer police, and now they do. Portland does. Seattle does. Forced vaccinations took another swath of cops off the job. Yep, that happened. Right now, the side story, King County Sheriff's Office, they're trying to get the whole vaccine mandate as far as their sheriffs, their deputies, to get that overturned because they're like, hey, you got a real spike in crime going on here, and we need as many, deputies on the ground as possible. Let's be getting that vaccine mandate over with as far as employment goes. And basically saying, hey, it's go time. We need to get, because we need these police back, whether they're deputies or city police. Portland's Antifa was part of Governor Kate Brown's mask and vaccine shock troop enforcement as well. The violent, childish Antifa came up against a notorious violent biker gang, which, unlike police, will fight back. So is that what happened? Kind of sounds like it, right? Antifa 0, biker gang 1. Here's a look at the hijacked presser. All right. And so the lieutenant, he rolls up and he's getting the thing going. And maybe like 5 minutes into it, this gal in bright red coat, she just starts talking. And so I'm going to play this here.
Let's talk about the protester who got detained giving medical aid last night by your police.
20 minutes for the ambulance.
Tell them what happened.
20 minutes.
Last night.
20
White
minutes
supremacists.
for fucking ambulance.
So what happened is the lieutenant, he stepped aside. He kind of calmly stepped aside. And there's a guy in the background somewhere just yelling stuff. And then you've got this gal up at the podium, and she's the one that has a tough time breathing.
20 minutes from all these white supremacists.
20
guess
minutes for a fucking
They started
ambulance.
shooting. Y'all let August 22nd. How many cops were off on August 22nd? How many cops were off? Letting them shoot at us in the street. Letting us buck all this shit. I ain't gonna stand here and let these cops lie. I'm not going to stand here and let these cops lie when they are sending gypsy jokers.
All right. She's indicating that the police are lying. Okay. Haven't heard that story from anybody else. Is that really true, or did you just kind of get into a confrontation with them and it didn't go well and now we want to blame the police? Yeah.
To kidnap us when they are sanctioning this violence against us. As Ted Wheeler is telling these white supremacists to stand back and stand by. We are dying. We are trying to peacefully protest and they are killing us. And I want to know.
They're trying to peacefully protest, but with guns. So, there's that.
Any of you care? I want to know if this police officer cares. I want to know if Ted Wheeler cares.
And
we are not going to let them capture the narrative.
Okay, so you kind of get the idea of it's just some craziness. You got some craziness going. You got unreasonable narratives going on here. This is not. Yeah, you've literally got unreasonable people. They don't want police at all. And then when things go sideways, and we've talked about this a million times, what's the first thing they do? Call 911 and, get somebody here. Our comrade is dying. All right. Yep. And, the EMTs, they're going to go do their thing. The cops are going to go do their thing. Yeah. So here you are. You've got Antifa complaining that the police are, condoning this behavior. And they're just trying to sort out what's going on and figure out what the deal is. But yeah, pretty interesting story from the standpoint of, you've got somebody here who's basically not letting Antifa just get away with whatever it is. Because when I was down in Portland in the summer of 2020, I mean, it was a free-for-all. It was basically just anything goes. And this was in downtown. This was during the time period of all the rioting and, going crazy on the federal buildings. It was a free-for-all. Everybody knew it. And and now you're trying to say, well, why aren't the police protecting us? Well, let's see. Yeah. This stuff, it's crazy. It's just crazy. You've got people who just aren't really, they're not rectifying things in their minds, the way that a reasonable person should. Now they're going to say, their argument would be, oh, look at us. We're the victims. We've had somebody killed, and the white supremacists, they're all around us, and they're going to try and take us all out. I don't know. Yeah. It's just a wild, wild story, right? And Portland is right in the middle of it. So if you have this situation escalate, guess what? It's already pretty violent in Portland. This is just one more storyline. It's kind of always been there. It's always been bubbling under the surface. When is somebody going to take issue with Antifa or, so many of these other quote unquote peaceful protesting groups with guns? And things happen. Well, they just happened in Portland, right? From what I understand, police officers in Portland are, they're doubled up in patrol cars because of this kind of thing and just the general violence going on. Saturday night, I think was there 3 or 4 shootings past weekend in Portland? So you've just got some crazy stuff going on. And, this headline kind of says it all. They blame police when things get violent. They're the ones that are always basically saying, overthrow the police, get rid of the police, defund the police, abolish the police. And then when push comes to shove and one of them gets impacted, who do they call? 911, get the police here as soon as they can. One of our comrades is down, which I get. That's the people that they care about. But when you get in a tiff with a biker gang, I don't think that's not something reasonable to do. So, get the argument, the flip side to that argument is, well, they came after us. All right. Well, what were you doing? Because when I'm at home, just hanging out, reading the news, nobody's shooting at me. I'm just going to throw that out there. When I'm kind of being a law-abiding citizen, nobody's shooting at me. No, nobody's taking a pot shot at me, and I'm not trying to take over police officers' press conferences. I'm not doing that kind of stuff. I'm not graffitiing up half the town. I'm not trying to break into federal buildings. I'm not I'm not destroying public restrooms. I'm not shooting paint guns at, security cameras. I'm not breaking into public buildings. I'm not breaking into private businesses and looting them. Just not doing that stuff. So the rest of us kind of look in on these storylines and go, what are you doing? And then when this kind of thing happens, people are like, well, you got in a confrontation with the biker gang. What did you think was going to happen? And how did that work out for you? Yeah, not great. All right. That's it for me on this one. I will keep you apprised, but this is a wild storyline. And I'm surprised I haven't read it before. It just, somebody coming into contact with some of these quote unquote peaceful protesters and something going sideways like this. We've had some incidences, but they've been usually a different storyline here. And that's why I think you've got this hijacked press conference, because trying to get out a different narrative and tough to sell this narrative from the other side standpoint, because so much of this just isn't really reasonable. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. We'll catch up soon. Bye for now.